Good afternoon, lady and gentlemen. Hope you all are having a great afternoon so far. We're continuing our discussion began on Tuesday about the self. And there are many components to that. And again, as I talked about when we began the lecture, I think this will be helpful and obviously things that you want to try and learn and get a grasp on, for any pop quiz that might be coming up and for the midterm exam that's going to be rapidly approaching. But also, I think that this is a chapter that can really just help you about life in general. Because if you don't understand yourself, Michael, that can lead to a whole host of problems throughout your development in your life. Having a good sense of self is so crucially important. I can assure you, Ron, that it is an ongoing exercise because we're also not only are we growing and changing, Maisha Hainsworth, the world around us is changing. We talked about introspection last time, and that's something that definitely, I'm sure most of us have probably undergone in this year that we've experienced. It is a brave new world, and it's requires some assessments in terms of like how do I fit into this. So one of the things that I hope that you're being mindful about, for example, in addition to all the things you want to be educated about, Ron, technology is a must. And people look at themselves like, hey, am I technologically savvy enough to be able to adapt into this new world and the world that is to come? Because some of these things are going to be a permanent fixture of our society. Hopefully one day soon we'll all be able to get back together again fully. But some of these changes are going to be going on forever. As you go through these changes, and as we develop into ourselves, one of the things that we all want to be mindful about is how other people influence the development of ourselves. Keep in mind some of the things that we talked about last time in terms of how your significant others, and when we begin to develop our self-concept, that we begin to imagine what our significant others think of us. Again, how we see within our families, amongst our friends. So in this way, again, if Michael, that you see that your mother sees you as respectful and as a gentleman, and you like the way that feels, like you begin to become that, and you kind of internalize that as a sense of pride about yourself. I know I have I've always prided myself on being very respectful of women, not necessarily just because it was something that was natural within me. I would like to believe there was Maisha, but I can also say for sure I had a mother that wasn't gonna have it no other way. That's even now. So within this, in learning and sizing up ourselves, there are a lot of things that we do as children, Maisha, that we think is normal and natural. We think that everybody does. But as we venture further out into society, we begin to do more of a social comparison. Now, social comparison is not just a situation where okay, I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses or this or that. There'll be some of that we'll talk about later, but just in assessing, where even though I don't really like math, Michael, I began to see myself as a child as somebody who was good at it. How do y'all think that first began to happen? When I first started going to school, how did I begin to see myself as somebody that was good in math by being within this environment outside of my home?
I would say probably, the feedback you got from it. If you like in class and you, all right, come up to the board, solve the math problem, you solve it, you got it right. Okay, good, good, good. You got it right. It's like, oh, that's kind of, reinforcing like, damn, I might know this.
Absolutely. So very early on, I wasn't trying to get the teacher's approval. I wasn't trying to be good at math. I was just trying to live. That's what all the kids are trying to do. It just exists. It's one of the reasons why, I love watching, children and the socialization of children. It's just seeing how they figure out and process the world. So you're absolutely right, Ron, that saying my teachers would respond well. I remember very vividly, this is third grade now. We played this game I used to call Around the World. And like each student, like, so you're in a classroom, you see how, the traditional desk alignment and stuff, Michael, and you would go stand to each student's desk. The teacher will put up a multiplication like equation, and whoever got it the quickest would go on to the next desk, and the other student would, like, sit down. So you got to go out, you got to go into a competition with each person in the class. And if you get it wrong, you got to sit wherever you at, and then the person that beats you, they move on and on and on and on. So I would very often be going around the world. So it would be me and this kid named Roger and this girl named Debbie Akinfor. I still remember to this day. We'd be like the top kids that would be like slaughtering everybody. But I would be getting their fucking ass routinely, Maisha. Again, that wasn't my intent. Like, I did not, before we started that game, I did not know that was going to happen. Because again, I wasn't processing that way. It's like, okay, cool. This is what we're doing in class today. And boom, like, get click. I was like, wow. So I very quickly began to compare myself and see, like, okay, in this area, there are, again, other areas. Like, so we went outside and played recess and track and field and stuff, Michael, my boy Jerome Cheatham, and Jerome, that's still my homie today. I would see how I compared to him when it came to like racing and doing athletic stuff. So we very early on learned kind of what we good at and what we fit. So I learned, like, again, I'm good at this, but I'm not as good at that. In the same way, Ron, that if I would have went up to the class and like I would have written down an answer and everybody would have laughed, how do you think that might have impacted my view of myself and my self-concept? Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, wait. You said if you would have went up there and got it wrong, everybody would have laughed, right? That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like with anybody, especially like at a young age, like they might have felt like they self-esteem, like, I just got this wrong for everybody. They laughing at me, like either they gonna feel like they dumb or they not gonna try to answer any more questions, anything like that.
Good. So I may feel like I'm bad at math, even though I might not actually be. But if I feel like I am, that has a huge impact on like how I perform. Ron Anderson.
Can I add on to that? Okay, so there's also the thought of like, you answered it wrong and everybody laughed at you. And, even though that might discourage you from doing more math or like going up to solve the question, you kind of want to beat people to the punch. So before, you laugh at me, I'm gonna make y'all laugh at me. Like, I'm gonna make you laugh. So like, that's how you can kind of develop into being, a class clown, in a sense.
Absolutely.
Kind of. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that class clown is usually only reinforced though if you get positive responses. Mm-hmm. If the little kids is looking at you like, why is he always disrupting the class? That might cause you to act out in another way. You might become the resentful bad kid in the class. But if you see that people respond positively to your class clownishness, like, oh man, the homies like, man, Ron is a fool, dog. The females start to be giggling like, oh, Ron, you're so funny. So you begin to see yourself, again, we talked about this last time, like people that are famous comedians, your Chris Rocks, your Martin Lawrence of the world, I have very little doubt that somewhere in the first, second grade, they was acting and cutting up somewhere. And we had a lot of class clowns. Not everybody grows up to be a comedian, right? But somebody else had to first tell you, man, you're really funny, dog. Like, and then as they got older, hey, Chris, man, your ass is a fool, dog. You really need to think about doing this professionally, man. Like I done seen some funny motherfuckers, but you just off the charts funny, man. Like just everything you be looking at. And then feel like, you know what? Maybe I could do this. So again, with all types of things, athletes and stuff, like, again, somebody had to tell LeBron James at some point, man, and for like people that are professionals, and really, quite frankly, like on almost everything you do, a lot of those things start very early on. Professional basketball players, professional violin players. You 5, 6 years old and somebody then told you, man, you really got some talent in this. People that can draw really well. So I knew, like, again, we all went to art class and stuff, Michael. I saw very early on, I compared some of my drawings with some of my partners. I'm like, okay, this probably ain't going to be able to be a career choice. Because again, social comparisons can be important. It's not just, it doesn't just have to be about deflating your ego. It can also be about being really honest with yourself and being honest with yourself and comparing how you fare out with other people. That yes, I'm really good in this area, but when we get to science class, my boy Javon, he really be getting it. It'd be taking me a little bit longer to kind of get those concepts. That can be good and healthy. Like, cause like Ron said, It doesn't mean that you have to stay there. It's okay to like, but being self-aware to know like, hey, I'm not good at this particular thing. Okay, cool. I can work and get better. So if again, like if you're like LeBron James, when you're 6 years old and you're playing basketball, you're gonna play like again, you like you don't just want to play with other people. Ideally, you want to play with the best, and you want to get compared with them. And that way, like you go to camps and stuff. Like so, you may be the best in Akron, Ohio. You go to this camp, and there's kids from all across the nation. You can see, okay, all right, hey, look. Hey, these dudes, like, I was kind of holding my own, but, they kind of took it to me these last games. I got to be honest with myself about that, Maisha. And in being honest about that, that helps me get better. So comparison theory does not just mean that you're trying to keep up with other people. It's having an honest assessment. Like, again, skills are not, God does not bless us with equal talents. Again, I learned very early on that one of my God-given talents, like drawing just ain't one of them, Maisha. My boys to this day, they still be making fun of like my drawing of like I had to draw like Dolly Parton like in 7th grade. Yeah, I don't know what that looked like. Some kind of it was crazy. And I had other homies again, they be like boom, 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 like boom. I'm like, wow. So it's okay to not be good at everything. Social comparison theory allows us to be aware of that. But we have to be careful with our comparisons because they can get to a point, Ron, where they're unhealthy. We see this, for example, with Facebook. And there is a thing, there is a research thing, Maisha, called Facebook depression. Please be mindful of your time on Facebook. Like, again, I just talked about in social research correlation. So we'll talk about that in here as well, correlation research, where there's a relationship between variables. There's a correlation. The more time you spend on Facebook, the lower your mental health goes down. Do y'all research on it? I could be making it up. It's a lot of data on here out there. Y'all can go check it out. Does that mean that happens for everybody? Of course not. There's no scientific thing that happens all of the time. Does that mean that you need to cancel your Facebook account? No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that you want to be mindful about it. The same way that there's a correlation, there can be correlation with the health effects, Ron, of drinking Red Bull that I need to be aware of. You want to be aware of, again, these relationships as well. And more importantly, how they impact this. Again, this whole chapter is focused on the self. So what this speaks to is that a lot of times people are basing their selves and how they should present themselves to the world by the fake, false-ass world of Facebook, where everybody is wonderful, nobody has any problems, everybody's a straight-A student, everybody's really popular, they go to the best clubs, their marriages are perfect, they have no problem with their children. Life is grand. Now, sure, Maisha, there are people that may be posting, happy pictures with their families and stuff while they DMing me and probably 2 other cats a few minutes later. But on the myth of Facebook, everything is great. And in this way, give me 1 second, Ron. They can be like, so the usage can be undermined to a person's well-being and sense of self because, again, it's only upward social comparisons. They're going to post when they get that promotion. Not as many posts when they get fired or get a pay cut. They're going to post from that great vacation spot. They're not going to post about, the credit card bill that they have to pay when they get back. So on Facebook, people tend to portray themselves in overly flattering ways that do not really encompass the totality of how they live their lives. And that's okay. Like I ain't saying very briefly, Ron, I got a cousin, like he posts all his damn bad experiences and dirty laundry on Facebook. Like, damn, Keaton, dog. Like, I'm like, somebody go get Keaton off of Facebook, man. He posted some macabre bad stuff again, dog. Damn. Somebody go get that brother a hug. But for the most part, it's all like, butterflies and rainbows. Ron, you've been very patient, young man.
I was just trying to connect 2 points. I was looking at my notes on introspection, and then on the notes for introspection, they mentioned that how people usually overestimate the positives in the self-assessment when it comes to introspection. Introspection my understanding is, looking at one's own feelings, like internal feelings.
Mhm.
And then when I'm looking at my social comparison theory notes, basically people describe themselves as different from others in their immediate vicinity. Now I was kind of thinking like, Facebook makes that kind of dangerous because there are people that kind of, damn, he posted this picture with this nice watch, this nice house. He got all the females with him, right? So it's kind of like that social comparison is going on there, but that's not necessarily in your immediate vicinity. That's kind of what you see and
Right.
consume through like media and technology, which again is everywhere. You really can't avoid it. So that's I was just thinking like, you might, compare yourself to Facebook, and then when you come, when real life comes around, like damn, now your self-esteem is low, and thinking, damn, I don't got as much as everybody, da 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 da. When in truth be told, you on the same equal footing, or maybe even higher than the people around you. I was again, my point was just making the connection that I feel like social media. We talk about Facebook specifically, but any social media can kind of mess up that internal, like, let's say, justification of damn, the people around me on Facebook are doing much better than me. I'm not doing what I need to do as an individual in life,
Right.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And again, that is generally not the case. And again, there may be times where, like I said, like in interacting, like, so I talked about before how my path through college was not a straight line. So one of the things that I struggled with when I was like 19, 20, 21, 22 in particular, is that I was still going through my undergrad matriculation, while some people I graduated with and who I was probably smarter than was graduating from college and beginning to go through the life course quicker than I was. So in many ways, like, again, like, I had to, like, strain not to get too down on myself. And I didn't get too down because, again, like, every person's story is unique. And I had, like, good rationales for my path and journey. And then B, I caught up very quickly, and then, went on my own. I got on my own track in I made up for lost time very quickly. I'll say it that way. But making those comparisons at the time was challenging, but it also could be motivating. Like, it's saying like, okay, look, there are certain, now you want to be clear, Ron, that you're not motivated by Michael's journey, but you have a certain path and trajectory and goals that you want to accomplish. And if you see somebody like sorry as Michael can do it, that lets you know, well, shit, I can definitely do it. And I'm joking, of course, but but it's with all sincerity. Like when I be talking about education and stuff, I use myself as an example. If somebody like me, man, can get through this school stuff, dog, I promise y'all, I was way more undisciplined than y'all when I was your age. Had far more distractions. If somebody like me can do that, man, I promise you can. I promise you. So it can be helpful, but we got to take it in stride. We have to take it in stride, and part of this, Ron, goes back to where we began, knowing ourselves. That yes, I see what this person on Facebook is doing. Yes, I see what my friend is doing in this venue. But that's not who I am and who I want to be. So understanding that is very important. When we talk about, again, our influences on the self, one of the things that we also have to think about is what things most impact our views of selves. So a lot of times, like when we view ourselves, we look at the most recent thing that happened. That I'm really disciplined and determined because I was really disciplined last semester. Again, the self that you truly are, Maisha, is the self that you are all the time, consistently, when ain't nobody looking. So that doesn't negate what you did last semester, but that recency effect may not necessarily knock out everything else that you've done. So Kanye all of a sudden decide like he wants to be black again and everything, I'm not going to allow 2 weeks of comments to outweigh all the fucking dumb stuff he said in recent years. In older adults, we kind of have a reminisce bump where, again, so like in thinking about ourselves, right? Like Ron was talking about earlier, most human beings try to accentuate the positive, not just because we're egomaniacal, although many of us are, because again, maintaining a healthy psyche can be a very delicate balance. But most of us overemphasize the positives about ourselves at the expense of like the full reality. We do this in terms of our autobiographical memories entails looking back at our lives, Ron, to kind of like get a sense of like, when in seeing who I am now in 2021, I look back, and I do this often now, I look back at the things and the people that allowed that to happen. And in some cases, some adults, we only look at what's more recent, or we reminisce about things more fondly than they really were. So I wasn't like, so now, for example, where my parents were very tough on me. Not overly, like, again, like I didn't feel like, particularly compared to like my sister even, or some of my friends, like I didn't feel like, my privileges were really resisted. But there was a high degree of accountability. If there was expectations, like you don't get to just sit around and be a lovable kid. Like, no, like we have expectations for you, Kareem. And when you don't meet those expectations, it's going to be a problem. And they were very clear and consistent about that. Looking back now, Ron, I'm very appreciative of that. But I wonder, am I just maybe romanticizing and reminiscing? Because when I was growing up, sometimes I'd be mad as hell. Like many parents. Like, again, I don't think so. Like, because again, a social comparison theory, Ron. Again, for better or for worse, I compare how I turned out, and I compare like how some of my friends and how they were raised, how they turned out. Like some of them have told me, like my best friend, like has told me, like, hey, Kareem, like your parents, man, like, like they was on point, they got it right. And again, not that they're perfect, but oftentimes in looking back at ourselves, we tend to reminisce over just the good things and not just the totality of what happened. We also look at transitional first. When we look at our portrait of ourselves, the full picture of ourselves, the transitional first are kind of the things like, so you may, in remembering your college years, many years from now, Maisha, you may not always remember the feeling of all 4 years. You may remember very vividly that feeling of like the first few weeks and stuff. I know looking back on my college years, I definitely remember like, a lot of it in great detail, but man, like that first month, first semester when we was away, that was a great, 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 great time in life. So what this speaks to is that if I use that time, Michael, psychologically to block out all the other times. We do this in relationships. Some trifling ass girlfriend that you had when you were 16, Michael. You looking back now, you up here looking at the Facebook pictures and stuff. You be doing it, dog, don't front. And you're looking at that relationship like, oh my God, it was so wonderful. No, it wasn't. There's a reason you ain't in a relationship no more, dog. So these are the things in terms of our memories often have an impact upon ourselves and how we interact with the world. That we distort the past again, that inflate our personal sense of importance as well and achievement. So like in this way, like, that your uncle who was on the football team in high school, like, he might have been like, a special teams player, but when he remembers it back in his mind, oh man, dog, I had like 6 touchdowns one game, man. So those kind of things. Again, many and most human beings do this in some capacity. We have to be mindful about this for ourselves. We see it again, right? So a good example, and utilize the textbook to help you out in terms of illustrating some of these things that we talk about here. That when you ask most people to look back on what type of student they were, everybody's an A student. Oh, hell yeah, I got all A's in school, dog. I was killing it. I'm gonna tell you for sure, Maisha, that was not me. Not like when I got like halfway through college, from that point on, like, undergrad, but yeah, otherwise, I might have a semester or 2 I was up, but it was more like in this C range here. But when people be looking back, you ask your mom and your daddy what kind of student they was. Oh yeah, they was an excellent student. Go back and look at their report card and see how it was. So culture, like with anything, we talked about this in principal sociology. Ryan and Maisha, I know you took that with me. Michael, I do not believe that you did, but surely you have heard of the concept of culture in some form. It's what informs our norms and values. So even though we have a one American society, we have an African American culture, an Hispanic culture, and even really like, a Cuban American culture, a Mexican American culture. Not just a Puerto Rican culture, Ron, but a New York Rican culture. So the New York Puerto Ricans call themselves New York Ricans. And it is different. Your culture, Ron, has a huge impact upon your self-concept. Huge impact upon your self-concept. There's a reason, Maisha, why there is a Black History Month. Now, we'll get into why it had to be the shortest month of the year at another time. But this was introduced, Michael, because the self-concept for Black people in this country through most of our history has been one that's been like, very negative and not really defined by us. One of the things that my parents were, and I would imagine many of your parents were as well, were very deliberate about, is making sure that I had a really strong pride in my Blackness. Because you're going to go into a culture where everybody is telling you that, you're this, especially as a Black male, you're this, you're that. But it also has an impact upon how you approach the world. American parents in general, we raise our children from birth to be thinking about, well, at least we used to. I don't know about y'all, little spoon-fed generation. I love y'all to death, but sometimes I really wonder. But for the most part, for most of human history, for most American history, the goal has been to really strive a lot of independence to cultivate a lot of independence in your children. Why do you think that is? Don't overthink this. Why do you think in America in particular, we really put this stress on independence, doing things for being self-reliant? Why do you think those things are so important and that American parents stress that in a way that may be different from parents from other cultures?
No, just from my perspective and what I've seen with people in my family, they strive to try to make their kids independent, to try to, I ain't gonna say to teach them how to get out the mud, but kind of just so they can learn how to do stuff on their own a lot of times, like whether it's making their own money or start, get a job early or anything like that. Just trying
But why? What is it about our country? You're right, you're right, Michael. What is it about our country that makes parents really stress those things? You go ahead, Mr. Greer, and then I got you, Maisha. Think about it for a second. Let me hear from Ms. Hainsworth, and I got you, Ron. What is it about our country that makes it, our culture, that you think makes parents teach their children those kind of things that Michael was being taught as a child? No wrong answers. Well, there are wrong answers, but don't worry about being wrong.
I think it's basically like how our society is put, like every person must like kind of defend for themselves. We don't want our citizens like to focus or depend mostly on the government, because like we shame people for being government like dependent. So in America, we teach everybody like go get a job to make your own money to, provide for your family and take care of your own. That's just how our society runs.
Outstanding.
And other societies don't do that.
Excellent, Maisha. Very good. Ron, if you want to add anything to that? And write down some of your classmates' comments. Don't just write down what I say.
Yeah. So again, to that same point that she just mentioned, I feel as if, America is very greedy, right? Whether you look at it from, let's look at it from the class perspective, right? Let's say middle and up, the big investors, the big businesses, they usually have a monopoly, it's like a good 5, 6, maybe 8 that own pretty much damn near everything. And again, there's this whole thing which, the billionaires, they don't pay enough taxes, but, we're going to tax the hell out of you, even though you're making less than, let's say 40K a year.
Absolutely.
But again, the point is that I feel as if America is really selfish. Now, if you Black, now America is really, really, really selfish. So it's kind of like, looking back on how shit was versus to how shit changed now. Yeah, as a Black parent, soon to be, or not soon to be, but as a Black future parent, it's kind of like, yeah, I need you to get your shit together. Yeah, I need you to get your shit together because, if you don't do it, ain't nobody else going to do it for you.
Excellent. Yeah. What this speaks to, Michael, is what it says about the culture and society itself. it's a cutthroat culture society. The wise philosopher Christopher Wallace once said, Maisha, and you may know it better as Biggie Smalls. Fuck the world, don't ask me for shit. Everything you get, you got to work hard for it. And that may sound awful, but like it's the real. Like nobody in America cares about your problems, dog. Nobody cares. It is a very selfish, cutthroat society. Now, again, there can be benefits to that. I'm not saying that that's only a negative thing. We'll talk about shortly why that can be a positive sometimes. But the culture, again, like, look, if you don't go out here, you're not getting into a mindset of self-reliance and not depending upon other people, you're going to get let down in life. Now, again, many people are going to look out for you. Don't get it twisted. But you just can't get into a position of counting on that. Being assertive, Michael. This is a culture where you got to speak up for yourself. If you don't, people are going to run all over you all the time. So keep that in mind, right? Like even in my classes, dog, when I be telling you to do your own research, if y'all see something that's wrong, like if y'all feel like y'all being mistreated by me or anybody else, I really need y'all to speak up about that. Like that's important. I ain't up here trying to socialize and train no sheep. Like if you see something that's bogus, now again, let's have a respectful adult conversation. Yo, punk ass, talking about like, because I'm not gonna come at you that way. But if you feel like you're being mistreated, like you need to speak up for yourself. A lot more times than not, it's gonna be like a misunderstanding about something, whether it be me or somebody else. But you need to assert yourself and advocate for yourself. If you feel like, again, you got a grade that you didn't deserve, Michael, don't sit quietly on that. If you feel like that you deserve this promotion, Ron, you got to speak up. Maisha, historically, it's been expected that women are supposed to be quiet and submissive. Fuck all that. Like if you have earned something, you need to be entitled to that. Entitled to things that you've earned. But you got to speak up for that. Like ain't nobody gonna notice you. Maisha and Ron, give me 1 second, Maisha and Ron. I saw your hands up. Give me 1 second. Now, in Japanese culture, for example, right, the cultural edict, Ron, is more to fit into the group. There's a proverb, an Asian proverb that says, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. In our society, we encourage individuality and to be independent. It's whack to try and be like everybody else. But in Japanese culture, again, it's expected, hey, don't be trying to stand out. Don't be painting your hair pink so that you can be different and special. Wear your hair like everybody else, man. What the hell is wrong with you? Now, I mean, if there are children, I strongly rebelling against that. Maybe I'll show y'all some photos of this, but I went to Tokyo a few years back, and like Tokyo is like one of the most hip hop places you can imagine. Like they're really heavy into hip, like it was crazy. So I can imagine, much like my parents, like it drove my parents crazy when hip hop was first coming about. I imagine that probably be driving to some of them Japanese parents totally buck wild. Ron, you've been very patient. I apologize.
You good. Just speaking back on that point of like, trying not to develop, dependency on somebody else, right? So I kind of wanted to, I just thought about what the fuck happened to me the other day. We went out to eat. We went out to pick up food. Colin went to pick up food. So we sitting in the car. Black dude knock on the window. He's like, yo, you got anything to help the homeless, feed the homeless? I'm like, nah, I ain't got nothing on me, Again, I got money, but again, I'm a college student and I'm on a budget,
Right.
So it's like, nah, I ain't got nothing on me. And the homie was like, even if you use a call, cash up, you can just buy me. I'm like, I ain't got it on me.
Yeah.
Boom. So then I watch homie go to mad other cars, boom, bam, whatever. So then we go on the spot to get our food. And I peep homie was sitting down on the counter to the right. So I'm like, okay. So then he spoke out loud, sure it's cold outside, right? It was directed towards me because we was the only ones in there. And I was just like, yeah, sure, it is. So then long story short, homie walks up to me and, he's talking. I'm just looking forward because it's kind of like, at this point, I'm having a good day. I don't feel like being a dickhead to nobody. I'm just like, yeah, yeah. So then homie pulls out like an iPhone 12, right? He like, so people be asking me how I got this phone if I'm homeless. And then that's when I started to pay attention just a little bit. And long story short, the story went, he told me some bullshit story like, oh, the white lady gave it to one homeless guy. He threw it on the floor. He didn't want to use it. Blah, blah, blah. Then the dude is like, You know what? Let me be real with you. I'm not even homeless. I get up, I put on some raggedy ass clothes, come out here, make my runs for the day, eat, and go back home. And it's like, my nigga, you dead ass? And it's like, yo, it's like, can I classify that as like dependency? Because it's like, my nigga, to eat for the day, you put on clothes and go ask around, get what the fuck you need, and then go back home.
Right.
And I'm glad I didn't give him no break because I felt bad about it at first. Because you know, me being from New York, you know, if you help one, this is how I see it. If you help one, you gotta help them all.
Absolutely.
And I ain't got enough to help them all.
Right.
So I kind of felt bad because there's only one. It's like, you know, damn, you know, if I wish I could. But then after that, I was kind of mad, like, yo, I should have been like rude to this nigga because it's like, you're not even homeless, yet you making your rounds to, you know, depend on other people to eat for the day.
We're gonna get bumped out in a second and log back in, but okay. I want to within that, what it speaks to though, right, is that other people's experiences and behavior should not change the stuff of who you are. If it's not in your self-nature to be rude and mean, I would encourage you not to let other people necessarily bring that out of you. So what it speaks to is that your stuff is going to be pretty consistent throughout. But I'll dive into that more. Let me hear from Aisha real quick before we break out.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback on that because like I had a situation like the other day. I was at McDonald's getting something to eat, and this man came up. First of all, he didn't have on a mask, and coronavirus is real. And he was like, "Can I get some?" Like he was like, "Can I get a few dollars or some change?" And personally, I knew that he always does this. But like, I was like, you never know. This might be my test. This might be my blessing.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, so here's a few dollars. And he was like, no, you got $5. And like leaning in my car to make sure I didn't have $5. And I was like, we both have like the same 24 hours in a day. So if I wake up to make mine to go to work, you can do the same thing. And
absolutely.
Like at first, my brother taught me that. I really thought that was rude because I believe that you're supposed to help people. But then, like, as I get older, I really see that because people really take, like, that situation. They take advantage of you because they know you will do it.
Right. And again, the culture is full of it. Again, we have to, like, in understanding these aspects of ourselves, again, like, you know what? I'm going to get bumped out. So let me see. I have 3:08 on my clock. We're going to log back in at 3:20 sharp. We're going to log back in using the same link at 3:20 sharp. Go ahead and take a quick break, read up on some of this, skim through some of this stuff that we're going to talk about in the second half, and we'll continue with Ron and Maisha's points where we left off. I apologize for the interruption, but we're going to get logged off in just a moment.